Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be attempting to get this vintage Hobby Town, what I believe is an RS3 locomotive, running again. I found this locomotive on eBay around a year ago in a parts lot with a whole bunch of other locomotives, all pretty much being sold off as scrap. And you can kind of see why. Unfortunately, this engine's in really poor condition. And if I recall correctly, when we tested this thing, it did not show any signs of life. I don't think there was even a bit of current draw. So things are not looking so great for this engine at the moment, but today I want to have a crack at trying to get it running again. And if we're lucky, it might just be able to ride the rails once again under its own power. If we're successful at getting it running again too, I would like to restore the cosmetics of it, but we'll leave that for another day. Today I just want to see if we can get this thing kicking once again. Anyway, let's get started. First thing I want to do is just set it up on the track and double check that it's in the condition I believe it's in. Putting a locomotive on the track can really reveal a lot about what could be wrong with it. And in this case, I'm not seeing any current draw over here on my controller. So you can see right here, there's power going into the track, but none being picked up. So this could be a broken wire. It could be a bad brush, whole variety of different problems. In some cases, you'd want to look to see if there was a light on the locomotive, because that would tell you if it was getting power or not. But I don't think this engine actually has a light, so that's kind of not an option in our case. But anyway, now we know that it is in fact in the same condition I recall it being in. Let's bring it back over to the workbench and try to get it running, see if we can figure out what's wrong with this engine. I haven't worked on this specific type of locomotive before, nor have I worked on a ton of Hobby Town engines, so I'm not entirely sure what to expect in this case. But I find generally that if you follow the rules of keeping things clean, lubricated, and properly adjusted, you can usually troubleshoot what the problem is. So in this case, my guess would be it's either a broken wire or maybe a really dirty commutator. It could be that the wheels are so dirty that they can't even pick up power. Who knows, but we should be able to discover soon enough. I don't even know if removing these screws actually makes a difference, but I'm going to remove them just in case it is what's holding the shell or drive or however this whole thing goes together. I don't know. Yeah, check that out. Is that I think that's a flywheel. A pretty big one too. Wow. I'm kind of curious on what this lonesome unconnected wire is supposed to be doing here. I also noticed this, which is that this seems to be lifting up. So it's possible the cabin actually held this whole piece in. So if we lift up, yes, we can access the rest of the drive. Look at all of that. I will say too, this flywheel doesn't look like it's straight. I don't know if that's going to prove to be an issue. Yeah, the drive is almost completely seized. So it seems okay. We've got all the parts though. That's really what matters in most cases. I don't know if this part lifts up the same way as the other part did, but yeah, we'll try it. Wow, what an unusual gearbox. Huh, I've never seen one quite like that before. This is all very unusual to me. Wow. It also looks like I was wrong about there not being any lights in this engine. You can actually see one right there if I get the angle right. So that's sort of interesting. On both sides too. I don't see any diodes, so I don't think it had directional lighting, but I'm kind of surprised to see that, honestly. So this whole drive just looks to be in such poor condition that I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disassemble this whole part here and see if we can take all of this out and clean it up a bit. The parts don't look too bad, but they could be better. Let's see if that will lift them now. Yeah, that is some very ratchet old grease. Look at that. Not much lubricity out of that anymore. That's really no wonder this whole thing is somewhat seized. Yikes, look at that. This is definitely one of the harsher cases of dried lubricant. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting, I'm not gonna lie. Well, here we are a few minutes later, and we've successfully turned this whole engine into what was a locomotive into a pile of parts. Now, let's see if we can actually do some good work on it. I'm also starting to rethink whether or not I don't want to already start working on the paint and things like that, because I've already got the whole thing apart, so it'd be a lot easier to work on it now. One thing I am pretty confident on, though, is that I do want to remove all these old posts and stuff. I don't really think these are of use anymore. Maybe if they had the actual railing still on them, but I don't know. I think we can yank these out without too many worries. I don't know. Maybe we can reuse them if we can get this old paint off. I think that's almost as bad as the other one. These parts are just unimaginably greasy. I mean, just look at that. It's coming off in like these chunks. So it's going to be a little bit tricky, I think, to get these cleaned up. But got a bit of a plan, which I'm going to try to scrape off as much grease as I can manually. And then I've got this little cup of, well, it's actually diesel fuel. And I want to throw in all the kind of greasy parts. Hopefully the diesel will kind of dismantle the thicker grease, and then I can just rinse it off. I really hope this all works well. Well, while the other parts soak in the diesel fuel, I think I'll get to removing all the paint. I've already organized all the loose screws with this neodymium magnet. So yeah, I think that's about as much as I can do for the moment. Now what I also need to figure out is what I want to paint this thing into, because I'm not 100% sure right now. I'm kind of thinking a Great Northern paint scheme, but I don't know if they actually had any RS3s or whatever this engine is, so I'm not 100% sure yet. Well, it's now been 24 hours and the paint stripper did absolutely nothing. The paint's completely intact. So I think what we've learned here today is that today's paint stripper is no match for yesterday's paints. So to try to fix this, I went out to the old Can Tire and I picked up this stuff, and I suspect it's going to be a lot stronger than what I put on this before. So why don't we go try that? Well, I've got to say that 70s style paint remover really meant business. It pretty much got all of the paint off. A few little spots you can see that I have to touch up, but other than that, I think this thing is pretty much ready to be painted. I've also already got this wire connected so I can hold it up while I do the painting. So let's get started with that. Well, with all the main components being given a fresh coat of paint and everything else being cleaned up quite a bit, I think we can reassemble this locomotive. It's not going to be perfect. I want to do a lot with the paint and everything else, but let's just see if we can put this thing back together and get it running once again. Let's begin. We're going to start with the truck. I've already done this truck, and I gotta say, I don't think it turned out too poorly. If I just move it a little bit, you can see it's freewheeling, so that's a great sign. It's no resistance, and it's actually turning the axle right here. So we just need to basically do the exact same thing with this other truck. I guess I'll start by putting this part in. That's all turning quite nicely. Well, I think this thing should be okay to test now because I've got it all wired up, but there's a pretty good chance it's just going to be shorted because in all likelihood I probably messed something up with the isolation or with the alignment of the wheels. You know, sometimes they have to be on a certain side. So yeah, but there's only one way to find out. Or maybe not, I don't know. Yeah, I think I've done something wrong here because it looks like we have an insulated wheel here and right here, so I have to change those. Well, it's all ready to go. Moment of truth time. And a short circuit. Well, I'm not entirely sure where the short would be, but I do have an idea, which is that it's possible one of the brushes already has a reference to ground, and I wired it up the wrong way. So what I'm going to try doing is I'm actually going to try flipping these around, and we'll see if that makes any difference. I might also want to check the springs. It's possible this motor itself has a short circuit. Who knows? I really hope this works now. Oh, it's trying to go. It's not going great though. I don't know, something does not seem quite right. Well, I've been looking over this thing for a while now, trying to figure out what's going on with the drive, and I think what's actually happening is the flywheel is rubbing up against part of the frame right around there. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to remove all these parts right here. I'll take the flywheel out, or at least just kind of get it out of the way, and just shave down the metal, because I think painting this thing, it would have made, you know, the area, like it would have pushed this just a little closer, but also the metal might not have been cut perfectly there in the beginning. So it's possible this engine never worked properly, but who really knows? Anyway, let's try to take care of that. I think this part right here was installed backwards. I think that is actually supposed to be over there, and it might be allowing the flywheel to move further one direction. So I'm going to try changing that and see if it makes a difference. I bet it will. Well, now that all that is hopefully sorted out, why don't we test it out? Yes! She runs! Serenity! Still doesn't seem perfect. The current draw is quite high, but I mean, it's doing it. Well, now that we have it running, I think we can put the shell on. I forgot to mention too, I did service the motor. I oiled the bearings and cleaned the commutators, so that's all good too. I think the current draw will come down just from running it. Everything kind of just needs to sort of break in. Anyway, let's get all of this in. Hopefully the shell doesn't cause any new short circuits here. Well, here she is all set up with the shell. I'm really hoping it didn't change anything with the drive because I don't feel like opening it up again. Anyway, let's give this thing some power. Hope for the best, everyone. Yes, it runs. Yeah. All right then. Well, I am very happy to see that. You know, it might not seem like much, but considering just how poor of a condition we found this thing in, it's actually quite impressive to see it running again. So yeah, absolutely thrilled about that. I mean, who knows how many years it's been since this thing last ran. And here it is, charging around the layout. Anyways, I think that's going to be about it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. And with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching.